Hello, this is Pastor Kevin of Antioch United Methodist Church. Good to have you here on our YouTube channel. This is my message for Sunday, January 9th, 2022. Welcome to the new year. Throughout January, my sermon series is titled, You and God Got This. Whatever you're facing in your life, it's not going to get taken care of and overcome just by you. And it's not all up to God. You and God together got this. Whatever you're facing, whatever stress you have, you and God got this. So I encourage you to watch all of the videos that I post on this channel in the month of January to get the full message, the full series of You and God Got This. Whatever stress you're facing, whatever disappointment you're overcoming, whatever loss and grief you have in your heart, whatever discouragement and setback, whatever problem you see up ahead, you and God together got this. I'm going to turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now, some time ago, I read this story in a message right here on this channel and in church. But there are some very important details about David, King David, that I didn't mention, which are relevant for us right now, today. 1 Samuel 17. You're welcome to turn in your own Bible if you want to. You can pause the video, turn to 1 Samuel 17 in your own Bible, and then press the play button on this video. I'm starting at verse 1. I'm going to jump around to various verses because this is a rather long story. Verse 1. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled in Judah. Verse 2. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. A champion named Goliath came out of the Philistine camp. Verse 10. Then the Philistines said, This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. They were discouraged. They were worried. They were nervous, biting their nails. Nobody had the guts to go out there and face Goliath. Verse 12. Now David was the son of Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. By the way, sound familiar? Like somebody else. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time, he was very old. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, verse 18, Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are, and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men in Israel in the fighting against the Philistines. Now, I want to pause there. Notice David's father, Jesse, didn't tell David to go out there and take on Goliath on his own. No. Jesse simply told his son David to go to the battlefield and meet his brothers and check on his brothers and bring them some cheese? Is that right? In verse 18, take along 10 cheeses? Now, I like cheese. Behold the power of cheese. But there was more to David than delivering lunch to his brothers on the battlefield. But Jesse, his father, did not see that. He couldn't see it. But why couldn't he? In the previous chapter, in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13 to be exact, the man of God, the prophet Samuel, had gone to the house of Jesse to anoint and consecrate, you might as well say, ordain the next king of Israel. And it wasn't any of Jesse's sons except, can you guess, David. The prophet Samuel anointed and ordained David to be the next king. He literally poured oil on David's head as a ritual, a ceremony, and laid hands upon him to call him and pray for him to be the next king, ruler of the nation of Israel. And that was done right there in front of David's father, we presume his mother, and also all his siblings. They all saw it. But did that make them say, whoa, David's going to be the next king? He is something else. No, not at all. His parents and his brothers still regarded David just as a shepherd who had no more skills or nothing else to add except bringing cheese to his brothers in the war zone, in the battlefield. You know, that tells me, that reminds me that some people, even in your own life, will never believe in you, will never encourage you. Some people, perhaps people who have known you for many years, some of them just won't get you. Some of them just will dismiss you and disregard you. Some people just won't see your potential. Some people just don't have it in them to really see all that's in you, all that you have to offer. That was certainly true for young David, and it's true for you, whether you're 16 or 85 or somewhere in between. There are some people that just are not able to see who you are and appreciate what you have to offer in life. You know what? Forget them. Don't worry about them. You don't have to be rude to them, but just leave them alone. Your life is not tied to their opinion of you. Your destiny is not tied and bound to the opinions of others. David was not esteemed and built up by his father. There's no point in this chapter where we see Jesse say, David, now you heard Samuel, the man of God, the prophet. You're going to be the next king of Israel. Now, son, go out there, make us proud. Go out there and fight Goliath. They're all scared. Son, I know you can do it. That would have been wonderful, but it's not there. Maybe you didn't hear those encouraging words from your own father or your mother. Maybe you grew up in a home where it was toxic and nobody encouraged each other. Nobody built people up. In fact, you may have been surrounded by people who were negative and cutting and snarky and sarcastic all the time. You can disregard them and still live up to your potential and be who you are. Your self-esteem and self-worth does not have to be chained or tied to the people who raised you, to the teachers who didn't encourage you. David moved forward despite not being really seen and known by his father. Despite not being built up by his father, he moved forward. Look at verse 20. Early in the morning, David left the flock, his father's flock, in the care of a shepherd, loaded up and set out, as Jesse, his father, had directed. But David wasn't just going there to deliver cheese to his siblings. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines, facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Verse 26, David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" Verse 28, when Eliab, David's oldest brother, probably firstborn in the family, heard David speaking with the men, he burned with anger at David and asked, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down here only to watch the battle." Now let's pause there. This is David's oldest brother putting him down, criticizing him. You may have people in your own family who have put you down and criticized you. Here is David's oldest brother saying, "I know how wicked your heart is." He called David's heart wicked. Why? What did he do? Maybe you've been unfairly judged and criticized. Maybe people have gotten the wrong idea about you, misunderstood you, called you names, put you down. Again, your life is not tied to them. David did not just take this lying down. David did not just put his head down and walk away in shame. He refused to accept this shaming and these put down comments from his oldest sibling. In verse 29, he said, "Now what have I done? Can't I even speak?" He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, the king, and Saul sent for him. But the point is that David stood up for himself. You may have to stand up for yourself to people in your own family. You may have to speak up for yourself, even when someone near you, somebody at work, somebody in your friend group, somebody in your family puts you down, misunderstands you, criticizes you. Somebody is hateful towards you. You can put your head down and walk away and cower away, or you can stand up and speak up for yourself. What are you going to do? In verse 32, David goes to talk to the king. He said to the king Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant," meaning David, "will go and fight him." David chose to volunteer himself to go and fight Goliath, even though David had no fighting experience. Despite not being encouraged by his father, being asked by his father to deliver cheese to his brothers, despite being put down and ridiculed and getting hate and drama from his oldest brother, David volunteers himself to go out there and fight Goliath. And the king says what? Verse 33, Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. So the king is not putting David down, but the king doesn't believe in David. This is now the third person in this story that didn't believe in David. And these are details that I don't believe I shared the last time I preached on the scripture, this story. But this is not the third time now that David is being put down. He's being told, you're not able to do it. You can't do it. You're too young. You're only a young man. You're only a shepherd. You're only a harpist. In the previous chapter, in 1 Samuel chapter 16, whenever King Saul felt bad, he would call for David to come and play his harp. And the harp music would soothe King Saul, and he felt better. But up until now, the king never saw David as a potential future king or a warrior or soldier. Only a shepherd boy, only a harpist. Perhaps people who are in positions of authority have put you down. An employer, a boss. You are more than what they think you are. I am more than they think I am. You have more in you. You have potential in you. You can do more than they give you credit for. You are capable of doing more than some people who know you give you credit for. You have more potential than most people can see in you. Now, again, David has now been put down and told no by a third person. First, his father didn't believe in him. Then his brother put him down. And now the king says, you're not able to do it. Again, David could have easily put his head down, said, yeah, you're right, you are the king. He could have turned around and gone home and only been known as a shepherd boy. But instead, David rose up. He went against the flow of all this criticism and hate against him. And verse 34, but David said to Saul, your servant, meaning him, has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. I bet King Saul didn't know that. You see, David had more experience than the king knew and gave him credit for. So David said, this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. Now, did David strike and kill the lion and the bear all by himself? He said in verse 36, your servant, meaning himself, has killed both the lion and the bear. But guess what? It wasn't David alone. Verse 37, he said, the Lord who rescued me, the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Meaning, when David was a shepherd boy taking care of the sheep and he was fighting off the lion and the bear, it wasn't all up to David. It wasn't all up to God. David and God together got it done. David and God together got it done. Well, Saul, the king of the land, was convinced and said to David, go and the Lord be with you. At that point, the king gave David his armor, and David put it on. But then he was hunkering around like Frankenstein's monster. He couldn't walk very well. And in verse 39, I cannot go in these. He said to Saul, he told the king, because I am not used to them. So he took them off. He couldn't wear the king's armor. It was a good armor for the king, but it wasn't for David. In the same way, you can't live somebody else's life. It's not up to you to live with the opinions and beliefs of somebody else. Your mother and father tell you what they believed, their opinions, their perspectives on life. That's fine. You may have brothers and sisters that tell you what they believe, what they think. That's fine. You may have co-workers and friends that tell you what they believe and think about politics, about religion, about life, or child raising. That's fine. But you don't have to put on their armor, meaning you don't have to take on in your mind their opinions, their beliefs. If you consider what somebody else says and it makes sense to you, by all means, accept it. But if you think about what people say to you and in your gut, in your heart, you think, that doesn't ring true. Take off that armor. Throw it off. And just say, that's okay. I have what I believe. I have what I think. That's what David did by saying, thank you for the armor. It's good armor. It's not from me. I can't wear it. God does not expect you to wear, so to speak, somebody else's opinions, somebody else's beliefs, somebody else's preferences and ways of living. If it doesn't fit you, throw it off. Verse 40, then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of the shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. David spoke bold words of faith. You're going to have to speak bold words of faith. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. The battle was not just David's, the battle was the Lord's. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag, taking out a stone, he slung it, and he struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. So that's the story. But the main part I want to emphasize, you may be familiar with David killing Goliath. The main part is that David overcame ridicule. He overcame criticism. He overcame scrutiny from his own siblings. He overcame the fact that even his father didn't believe in him to be a warrior or a king. David overcame scrutiny from the guy in charge, the authority figure, the king, Saul. Even he didn't believe in David. Nobody believed in David. Well, except one, God. God believed in David. That's all that was needed. You will have days in which you feel like nobody is cheering you on, like nobody's in your corner. You will have days, and I have them, in which you feel like nobody is calling you, nobody is texting you, like you have to encourage yourself because nobody else is encouraging you. I've been there. That was David. He was there. But David wasn't alone. He most likely felt alone when his father, his brothers, the king didn't believe in him. But God believed in him. And David and God got it done. David and God got it done. David and God together got it done. Whatever challenges you're facing right now, it's not all up to God to get it done. It's not all up to you to get it done. You and God got this. You and God together. You and God are going to get it done. You and God are going to get it done. When David told the king, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine," David was remembering God's faithfulness in the past and using that to encourage himself. And you may have to encourage yourself in the Lord by remembering the hard times that God got you through. The hard times of last year, the hard times of 3 years ago that God got you through. David had to encourage himself over and over again. This is chapter 17. Look at 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6. It says that David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him. And that's not referring to marijuana. That's referring to taking stones and throwing them at him to kill him, because the soul of all the people was grieved. David did something to make them all mad, every man for his sons and for his daughters. They were all mad at David. It happens. Sometimes you do something to make people mad. It happens. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And sometimes when you feel alone, like nobody's helping you, nobody's encouraging you, nobody's trying to understand you or see things your way, you're going to have to encourage yourself and remember all the times, the hard times that God got you through. Ask yourself, what is the giant, the Goliath, that you face right now in your life? Sometimes you just have to encourage yourself. You may feel alone while facing an overwhelming stress, not feeling supported by family members or people that you've known for a long time. You have to encourage yourself and keep on encouraging yourself by reminding yourself of your testimonies, your own unique stories of getting through things, and reminding yourself that it's not all up to you. You and God got this. Remind yourself that the problem that is in front of you is no match for the power within you. Whatever makes you cry tears into your pillow at night, you're not alone. You and God got this. You and God are going to get it done. You and God are going to get it done. Actor Tom Holland has played Spider-Man more than any other actor in movies. During his early childhood years, the actor was bullied for taking a ballet lesson and also for his dyslexia. Instead of being emotionally destroyed by all that bullying and by his dyslexia, he studied, he worked hard, He went to auditions. And now he's in the Guinness Book of World Records as the youngest actor to play Spider-Man. He got it done. If there's a Goliath in front of you, that means that there is a David inside of you, a warrior inside of you, a king or a queen inside of you. And you and God are going to get it done. Say it with me. You and God are going to get it done. Me and God are going to get it done. So, throughout this week, I encourage you to say these statements. Make these affirmations. I stand up and speak up for myself. God's opinion of me is more important than people's opinion of me. I'm leaving behind toxic people and toxic relationships. Number 4, the problem in front of me is no match for the power that is within me. And lastly, the Lord who rescued me from past problems and past trials will rescue me from whatever I face this year. You and God are going to get it done. You and God are going to get it done. So go forth, believe in yourself, and know that God believes in you, and get it done. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. I'll be here each week, each Friday, to post the following Sunday's message right here. If you want to watch me deliver this message live, join us in person for worship at 3614 North State Highway H in Springfield, Missouri, or join us online at our Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/Antioch United Methodist Church. All one word, lowercase, no space. I'll be on Facebook Live delivering this message with our church services at 8:30 a.m. and 11 o'clock a.m. Thanks again for watching. Be blessed.